Welcome to Explore. I'm Mary Ruth Snyder, and today's guest is Roger McDonell. Now, Roger, you may recognize that name because he has been around Campbell River for decades. He might share how many. But he has had many incarnations since he's been here. So we're going to start way at the beginning, and we're going to start with, where were you born and raised?
Oh, well, thanks for having me here today. Born and raised in Manitoba, and came out here for holidays in the late 70s after taking up scuba diving, and found that I had this intense desire to come back and spend more time diving here. So.
Okay, you're jumping like 10 minutes ahead of time here.
But that's where it started.
Okay, fair enough. So which part of Manitoba did you grow up in?
Southwestern Manitoba, Brandon area.
Oh, in Brandon?
Yep.
Okay. And do you still have family there?
Family in Winnipeg. Yep.
Yeah?
Yep, still a few there.
Now, did you do all of your schooling in Brandon?
Most of it, yeah.
Like right through high school?
Yeah, did high school there, and spent a little time in southwestern Ontario for 1 year.
Okay. And did you go on to post-secondary?
I did a little bit of time at Brandon University.
Okay.
Yes. All
right. So how old were you when you started to explore beyond Brandon?
Well, I had was working as a bartender in Brandon, and the bar manager came in one day and said, "Hey, I just signed up for some scuba lessons." And I went, "What?" And he said, "Well, there's 2 spots available, so I signed you up too." And I went, "What are you talking about?" At that time, I didn't really, I used to go swimming at the Y, which is where the scuba course was. And it's something that just caught me, and I just became totally enveloped by it. Came out to BC for a holiday to visit my sister, who was, at the time, my brother-in-law was working at the base in Comox, and did some diving in the ocean, and my eyes opened up to the undersea world. And that, unfortunately, couldn't find work at the time, so I went back to Manitoba, but returned the following summer, and I've been here in Campbell River since.
Now, how old were you when you did that holiday?
I was 20.
Oh, just 20?
Yep.
So you're pretty young still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems like a long time ago.
So then you managed to get back here a year later.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you do first when you came to Campbell River?
Well, I had been in radio in Manitoba, and so I came out here. I had made contacts in the radio in Courtenay initially, and ended up being a news reporter at the radio station in Campbell River. Was my first job.
Oh, and what was the radio station called back then?
CFWB. Yes,
okay.
It was just a little station, and I was a fledgling news reporter. Had no news background, so it was all learn as you do, and that sort of got me started. I ended up, of course, being everywhere in town, because immediately you're going to council meetings, you're going to school board meetings, you're going to the police station every morning to find out what's happened overnight, and reporting it all on the radio. And at the same time, the editor of the Mirror newspaper said, "Here, can you start taking some pictures for me? Because you're going to these things anyway, and I can't get to everything." So he got me into photography.
Okay.
And that started me onto another path with the same time as underwater photography, because then I went from radio to a camera store.
Okay.
And
now, how long were you in radio?
Not very long. Well, I was probably a year in radio in Manitoba, and then only about 6 months here.
Oh, really? Because your voice does have a really good timbre for radio, for sure.
That's how I got started. They said, "Yeah,
okay.
you shouldn't be a bartender. You should be a radio announcer." And so they stuck me in the radio room. And
all right. So so you transitioned from radio after 6 months into what?
Well, I came here as a diver and met the dive community.
Okay.
I started doing photography because of doing news photography. And then I got into working through contacts with the dive community in the camera store. And so I started this intense passion with photography and cameras, and got into the dark room and everything else. And so that started me on that part of it. And these pieces started to come together.
And what was the name of the camera store that you worked in?
Oh, then it was Bill's Photo Supply down on
Bill's
Shoppers
Photo
Row.
Supply, okay. And so that would have been approximately what year?
That would have been about 70, 78, 79.
Okay.
Yeah, 79 probably.
Yeah, okay. And how long were you at Bill's Photo supply?
Well, they went through some changes with the store management and stuff, and they had closed a couple of other stores, so they brought a manager up here. At the time, I was managing the store, so I got kind of bumped down in seniority, and then I went other directions. So everything kind of just kept moving around until I got into working with Budget Rent-A-Car for a while. I was doing sales and marketing for them, and worked up in their Port Hardy office for a year. And
oh, wow.
then, of course, while I was up there, I was diving around Port Hardy. Then came back to Campbell River. Continued a little bit for a little time with Budget. Oh my goodness, where did I go from there? I don't know. It was kind of bouncing around. It seemed like I had a different job every year, but funnily enough, it was mostly because I was enjoying the diving so much. I didn't want to go elsewhere. I mean, I could have gone to Victoria with the car industry, car rental industry, but I just had a passion for Campbell River, so stayed here. Was involved in things. Got involved with the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
Ended up managing the Chamber of Commerce for 6 years.
Oh, okay.
Back from '86 to '93, and then I went into computers for a while, and sort of like
computers in the '90s. Wow, you were an early adapter.
Yeah, I was. I like to think I was one of the first people in Campbell River to be connected to the internet.
Wow.
So, because I was dialing up long distance to Courtney, where they had a dial-in service, and they didn't have it in Campbell River yet.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, that's kind of cool.
I'd like to dive into things and just sort of see what comes out of it.
Okay, and then okay, so now we're in the mid '90s, and you're still diving.
Still diving.
Still diving. Okay, and so after you finished at the Chamber, what was next?
From the Chamber, I went into computer sales.
Computers.
Did that for a while. Got into internet sales as the things developed with the internet.
Okay.
And then ultimately I got into, well, because I was still interested in photography, but I had transitioned somewhat into video. I used to do some volunteering here at the studio, in fact.
Oh.
And
so it was, what was it called back then?
Well, that was CRTV.
CRTV.
Yeah, Campbell River Television.
Yeah.
And then from there, with the computers, I got into computer editing. Ended up starting my own video production company for a little while, with a goal of trying to get to do underwater, but the technology wasn't quite there for the underwater part of it.
Yeah.
I was still doing stills,
yeah.
A lot of still photography, but the video wasn't quite there. Then I got into other things and ended up back into news media with my video production, because I was a roving news reporter for doing freelance work for CTV and Global, and very seldom CBC and stuff like that.
So when would late '90s, is that?
Started that in about 2000.
2000?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I did that for 5 years or 6 years, I guess, and then got into a short stint in politics in Campbell River. So.
Okay. So were you counselor, or did you? So you ran for office?
I guess because of my 6 years with the Chamber of Commerce, I had attended. Well, I have to go way back, sort of to the start of things. When I first got here, of course, I was going to council meetings, so I understood the process of local municipal government.
Right.
And then when I was working for the Chamber, I was still going to the council meetings, but as a representative of the Chamber, sort of seeing what the local government was doing that the business community could have some input into. And then when I went to run for council, I wasn't too happy with the mayor at the time and some of the things that were going on, and some of the other candidates running for mayor. So I kind of just jumped the ladder and went for mayor of Campbell River. And surprising to everybody, including myself, I was elected.
Okay, so what year was that?
That was 2005.
2005, okay. And back then the terms were only 3 years,
3
correct?
years,
Okay. So you did one term as mayor?
Yes.
And then you left politics after that?
Yes.
Okay. And then what happened after that? So we're at 2008.
Yeah, 2008, I wasn't doing too much at the time, because I was just kind of recovering from some personal family issues and stuff. 2011, though, I got back into, I actually followed another passion, which was in the whale watching industry. So I ended up buying into a whale watching company in Telegraph Cove, and became a boat captain and doing that. So.
Okay. And how long did you
did that for 6 years?
Okay.
And then ended up back in still in Campbell River, based out of Campbell River.
Okay.
And then in 6 years, I guess it would have been 2000. What year are we at now? 2018?
This is 2024. Yeah, so
2017, 18.
27, yeah.
Back in Campbell River, and got involved in doing dive charters for the local dive shop, and then
okay.
and ultimately became a partner in the dive shop and doing dive
Okay.
charters for the last 6 years.
Oh, great. Okay.
So,
So you came full circle.
well, that's what I was saying. It started with the diving, and I came back to the diving. So
Right.
it's sort of been a thread that's gone through the whole process of my time in Campbell River.
Right. Well, not just Campbell River, but literally since you were 19 when you first came out on holidays.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right.
So it's just been this passion for the ocean.
Right. Now, knowing that how old were you when you did your first dive out west?
I would have been 20.
20.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the 30 years, actually, what year was that? 71?
77.
77.
Yeah.
So is that 40 years?
Yeah, it's about 46 years.
Okay.
Give or take, yeah.
In the 4 decades
Yeah.
since you started diving, have you noticed any really large changes under the water?
Well, it's interesting. I did a presentation about a year ago to the Rotary Club about what I had seen, because I had these photos that I'd taken back in the 80s, and I thought, well, people are talking about what's going on in the oceans around the world, because often you hear about coral reefs that are deteriorating, and
Yes.
things are changing so badly because of climate and so on. So I kind of started to look at some of those pictures from back in the 80s and
Right.
comparing to the photos I'm taking today, and I realized there wasn't a whole lot of change.
Okay.
And it was kind of a bit of an awakening to, like, things aren't really that different here. So I started to ask myself, well, why? And it's because of the conditions that we have in the diving here, with the currents and the ocean movement, and
Okay.
lots of cold water coming up from the deep. So you don't have that hot layer on the surface that affects so many of the other coral reefs and things like that.
Right. Okay. Now the other thing we hear about a lot when it comes to the ocean is the gigantic plastic garbage thing that is growing and growing somewhere out in the Atlantic or the Pacific. Have you seen additional refuse down below?
I'd have to say no.
Okay.
Again, we're in the areas that I'm diving in, mostly in Discovery Passage, so along the Campbell River, and actually more of the Quadra shorelines.
Yeah.
Occasionally when we're on the surface, we see something coming. One of the strangest things that I pulled out of the water was the plastic bumper of a Honda Civic. Yeah,
Okay.
I shook my head too when I saw this thing floating along. And of course, anytime we see anything like that
Right.
in the water when we're out there, we're bringing it in
yeah, of
and
course.
recycling it or
Yeah.
disposing of it. But the down on the bottom, I wouldn't say there's been a lot of refuse, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty clean. It's pretty
Okay.
pristine, and I think that's one of the really beautiful things about this area.
Well, and how would you describe when you dove on the West Coast for the very first time? What went through your mind when you got under the water? What was that for? What was
Coming
that like?
from learning to dive in the lakes of Manitoba, where if you saw a single little fish, you were just thrilled and excited. Coming to the coast of British Columbia, and seeing like things with color, like a purple starfish, you think, wow, and then it's just like there's not just one, there's like several. Well, no, there's in fact hundreds, and so I think that's what kind of started my intense curiosity about what was going on in the undersea world. Unfortunately, didn't have the technical background as say a marine biologist would have, but because of photography, you start to identify things, and then you start doing your research. And so you learn about the different types of fish and things like that. The really fascinating things about the diving in the Campbell River area is there's so much life. I often tell people, like, sometimes I'm down there diving in the currents, and I'm trying to sort of brace myself to shoot some video, because you don't have the benefit of a tripod, and as somebody who's worked with video, that things get shaky, so you're trying to steady it. So you're in an environment where you're moving, the water's moving, and you're trying to find something to position yourself. I have a hard time sometimes finding a piece of bare rock that I can put a finger down on a wall of color, full of invertebrate life and sponges and things like that. I mean, I have a few pictures that I brought along of some of the color, like in these waters here. There's literally carpets of strawberry anemones, which are these bright little, they're the size of your thumb, and they're an invertebrate, and they've got these little tentacles that reach out and grab food as it comes by. And it's just a bright red carpet.
Wow. When you did your first dive and you had that, sounds like it was a major aha moment for you. Mm-hmm. Have you ever lost the wonder of what you're seeing when you, because now I'm guessing you've been on thousands of dives.
Hundreds. Yeah.
Okay, hundreds.
Yeah.
So hundreds of dives over the last 40 years. Mm-hmm. Have you lost that sense of wonder? Like, has it become, old hat, or does it still cause you to go, wow?
Well, there's so many interesting things down there, and
okay.
The more you learn, the more you know you don't know about what's going on down there. I mean, I can, one example was just recently diving off the shore of Campbell River, one of the shore dives that we have at the Argonaut Wharf. And a lot of times we'll see giant Pacific octopus down there. And I mean, there's recently been a lot more interest in the giant Pacific octopus because it was featured in the National Geographic series called The Secrets of the Octopus. And in fact, one of the episodes, a good part of it was shot here in Campbell River.
Oh, okay.
But to see one of these giant Pacific octopus, which can grow up to 30 feet across and weigh 50, 60 pounds. I mean, the one that I have video of here was out hunting. It was maybe 12 or 15 pounds. And these things only live 3 or 4 or 5 years. So they're not
really?
long-lived creatures.
Oh, okay.
But yet to see one, having this interaction with you as a person in their environment.
So is that the video that we're going to see right now?
Yeah,
okay, so walk us through that. We're going to see some video of you underwater. So explain to us what we're seeing.
So basically, I'm swimming along over the kelp, and I see this movement which catches my eye, and I recognize it as a giant Pacific octopus. So I, of course, position myself to start filming it. And being as how I'm the larger creature in the ocean, the octopus is cautious about my presence. So at first it's sort of like, well, am I a predator, or what's going to happen here? And usually they're kind of maybe somewhat annoyed by my bright video lights that I use in order to bring out the color and stuff underwater. But after a while, it kind of settles down and starts squinting at me. And then it just sort of goes, well, I'm not disturbing it. It's on a hunt for some food, and so it starts going about. And in the video, you'll see where it spreads itself out and starts to cover an area, and it's kind of catching things underneath between its eight arms.
Oh, okay.
And it just sort of kind of tolerates me for a little while as I I think I spent maybe 8 or 10 minutes with this one particular octopus.
Right.
And it's just, there's such an intelligence with it.
Yeah.
And that's what they talk about in this National Geographic series, which I recommend people watch. It's really quite interesting. But after a while, I sort of I don't want to interfere with its life down there. And that's just the type of thing that you see that kind of sparks your interest to go back and see it again, or see something different.
Okay. When was the first time you saw an octopus?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. I don't know if I can remember the first time. I mean, I've had several amazing encounters with them. I had one, and this is going back about 5 or 6 years ago. I was swimming along a ledge, and there was a sort of kelp streaming up overhead. I was probably in about 30 feet. And I had my camera in my hand, pushing it ahead of me. My dive buddy was swimming away to see something else. And all of a sudden, this arm came down my arm, and I realized it was a fairly large octopus. Now, normally,
Oh,
that'd
wow.
be fine, but octopus can be curious, and they can do things like grab your regulator and kind of,
Yes.
what does this do? And, they're strong enough that they could pull it out of your mouth.
Wow.
Or they could pull your mask off, things like that. I mean, not intentionally.
Of course.
But just they're curious. And as they age, they get more curious. So my first reaction was to push this octopus off of me, which it finally did let go and went down on the bottom. And then I realized, I better film this. So I turned on my camera and started filming this thing for about 6 or 8 minutes as it moved along. And as another diver came along later, you could see the size relationship of the diver and the octopus. And this was probably a 50 or 60 pound octopus, probably
Wow.
towards the end of its life cycle. And as they aged, they sort of get, somebody has said senile, but I don't know if that's the case or not. But this octopus was just curious and probably, I don't think it was looking at me as prey, but it was just sort of like, I'll just jump on. So maybe it was just wanting to give me a hug. but they're really amazing creatures. But the creatures out there, there's so many different ones. I mean, I think on the other scale, some of the smaller ones that we see are these little sea slugs, which you would think like a slug is kind of a gross thing you see in the garden. But underwater, they're an incredibly colorful creatures.
Oh, okay.
And they're very easy for photographers to take pictures of because they're not moving very fast, and so you can line up your shots and everything else.
And you mentioned that you also have given us a number of photographs that we're also going to see. So maybe just talk about some of the photographs.
Well, I'm trying to think of which ones I sent, but there's creatures down there, like one that I like to relate to people because they know Nemo. Finding Nemo is a very popular cartoon series. Well, we have this little fish, which is about the same size as Nemo would be in the real ocean. This one is called a grunt sculpin.
Oh,
and it's kind of it's a cute little creature when you stop to look at it. It doesn't really swim so much in the open water, but it kind of scurries along the bottom, and it's white with orange stripes on it, with a little sort of a snout.
Oh, fun.
And apparently, when you take them out of the water, they make this grunt sound, which is why they're called a grunt sculpin. They only get to be 2 or 3 inches long.
Okay.
But they just have this really cute personality to them. So, and I call them the cold water Nemos, I guess.
Yeah. Fun.
They live in barnacle shells sometimes and lay their eggs in there and stuff like that. So just when you start to understand sort of the life cycle and things like that of these creatures, it's just amazing.
Now, are you still taking out dive tours? Is that what you call them?
Yes, we do dive charters here in town. I'm still doing some of the captaining. Recently sold the business, so I'm kind of stepping back a little bit, only so I can go and do more diving myself instead of having to be on the surface directing divers. I mean, we're out, we dive here in Campbell River 365 days a year.
Yes.
Probably the biggest factor for us not diving is the wind. It's pushed the boat around and makes it a little harder to get the diver safely back in.
Yeah.
But the water here in the wintertime is much clearer than in the summer because you don't have the plankton blooms with the sun.
Oh, okay.
And we can have visibility that's up to 100 feet, which rivals a lot of the tropical diving.
That seems excessive. 100 feet?
Yeah. I mean, right now we're into the summer and we go through periods where it's, it might be
a little bit cloudy.
5 feet.
Oh, okay.
But like if you go out today, and I was on the water yesterday looking down, I wasn't diving, but it's probably in the 20, 25 foot range.
Okay.
So it's still pretty good visibility. It's not tropic visibility, but it's very comparable.
Now, have you done any dives in other locales around the globe?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean,
I've
I've done diving in Hawaii and Mexico and places like that.
Have you ever come across a shark?
Yeah. Come
And
across
you
the
live
sharks
to tell the tale.
Sharks are, in fact, we don't have any sharks here that are really dangerous, which is, it's kind of a safe area to dive. The most dangerous thing I tell people here is a sea urchin because of all the spines on it. If you ever sit on one of those, it's quite, but there isn't dangerous things here. Like we don't have those big, man-eating sharks.
Okay. So for anybody in our audience that has any interest at all in wondering about what's happening down under, what would you recommend? Because we are running out of time on this show here.
Well, for people that are interested in diving, I mean, we've had this incredible dive boat that has an elevator on it to lift you out of the water. I mean, there's a lot of gear involved and stuff like that. But the best thing to do is if you think you're interested, but you're not sure, you can do what's called a Discovery Scuba course, or Discovery Scuba Dive, where you basically go to the pool, try breathing off the apparatus.
Okay.
A course runs, a lot of it's done online. There's 4 or 5 dives for learning with an instructor.
Yep.
And then basically you're ready to go. After you do the basic course, once you've got some experience, you go on to you take an advanced course, so you can dive a little bit deeper, you're expanding your skills, stuff like that. And then you can go right through, some people go on. I became a dive master, so I was trained to take people out diving, that type of thing. And then you go to instructors and stuff like that.
Okay, amazing. Do you think you'll ever tire of it?
I hope not. I mean, I designed this boat, had it built here in town with an elevator on it. And one of the things I like to talk about is we had an 80-year-old diving off of it on his birthday.
That's
and,
awesome.
I mean, with all the gear that you wear, I mean, it is a lot of gear.
Yeah.
But if you learn to dive here in these waters, you're ready to dive anywhere in the world.
Okay.
Because this is the most, I say challenging, but it's not so challenging that there's not everybody doing it.
Okay.
I mean, we had a group of students from down island out diving here last week, and there was 20 of them. They're all 17. We get kids as young as 13, 14 that want to learn to dive.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing with us your video that you took underwater and all of the photography. Absolutely breathtaking and truly beyond words. It's so beyond colorful and delightful and shocking and awe-inspiring all at the same time. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing the video and photography with us. And thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. I hope people will come out and join me.
Okay, there you go. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Explore. We will see you again.